So with that information that I've just unloaded on you, I'm going to introduce Laurie Warnock of New Hampshire Poison Control.
We just put a minute to myself. Good.
Thank you. Just hit the button right there.
So as Celeste mentioned, I'm Laurie Warnock. I'm the education coordinator for the Northern New England Poison Center. I am known in New Hampshire as the face of poison, and I have to do the hand gesture. It's required. I'm the only employee of the Poison Center here in New Hampshire. It's actually located at Maine Medical Center in Portland. Covers Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. The bottom of almost every slide you'll see nnepc.org, that's our website, and 1-800-222-1222, which is the Poison Center's number. 24/7, 365 days a year, free, confidential, great source for just questions. I have used it personally. Has anyone else ever used had to call the Poison Center? Thank you. Small child or pet? Small child. 3-year-old boys are like my favorites because, bless their hearts, I've actually had to call it for my husband, he keeps the dog's phenobarbital for seizures on the windowsill in the kitchen, and his own glipizide blood sugar medicine also on the windowsill in the kitchen. They both get a pill at night and in the morning. They should not get the same pill, however, at night and in the morning. So one day he tells me, I think I took the dog's pill. So disguising my voice, I call my employer and say, hi, it's Laurie. Yes, I know. My husband took the dog's phenobarbital pill. Is this a problem? Well, what's his weight? Guess his weight. I don't know. Is his nose cold and wet? Ha ha ha, very funny. You know, they have a great sense of humor. They're trapped in a windowless room. So it was not a problem. Except 2 weeks later, he accidentally gave the dog the glipizide pill. Now, we also take pet calls. It's sort of a starting point. If we can't answer the question, we'll refer you to ASPCA, who will ask you for a credit card number before they give you important advice, but that's what keeps their doors open. And so my boss did tell me this is concerning because the problem could be the dog's blood sugar could drop precipitously and then she would go into insulin shock. And so I should call ASPCA because no way to really monitor that, really. Could I take the dog's blood sugar? Well, we don't have a starting point, so we don't know. So I called ASPCA, and they could not help me either. So I spent the rest of the night giving the dog a handful of Frosted Flakes every hour on the hour to keep her blood sugar up. She was quite happy with the whole thing. But now the medications are kept at separate ends of the house because we engineered safety into that. So there are plenty of good reasons to call the Poison Center. I'm going to talk to you about electronic cigarettes, electronic nicotine delivery devices, ENDDs. Vaping is the other term for it because what we're doing is vaporizing either a liquid solution or vapors from heated materials if we're talking about marijuana and inhaling those vapors. So it's known as vaping. Once upon a time, there were cigarettes. And we knew about cigarettes, right? They were sexy. All the cool kids smoked them. They could be either relaxing. Oh, at the end of the day, I just need a cigarette. Or first thing in the morning, I can't get out of bed without my first cigarette. We knew that because there were movie stars that smoked cigarettes. John Wayne, ever so macho, Steve McQueen. Lauren Bacall used to talk about what a dramatic moment it was for her. Snap open her cigarette case, pull out a cigarette, tap it, hold it to her lips, and wait for him to light it. He would light it, she'd take a long drag, and then blow it out in his face. And she'd say it was a whole scene setter. It set the mood. I mean, you know, early audiences would be clutching their pearls, good Lord, they're having sex. It was that kind of moment. And that was the image that we knew, but what we didn't know was what the cigarette companies knew. And this is some of the other advertising strategies, of course, the Marlboro Man, right? Big rugged guy, the camel guy. 3 of the models that posed as Marlboro Men died of lung cancer. Not really that surprising. And because it was the era, we had to have a lady cigarette as well, right? You've come a long way, baby. Virginia Slim's ad. And then the pretty cigarettes. Smoke Pretty Eve. But if you go even further back, and kids that I show this ad to are usually amazed because who would ever think you would say things like, before you scold me, Mommy, maybe you'd better light up a Marlboro. we don't even see these kinds of ads for the most part. First of all, because kids aren't reading magazines, and because we've limited where these print ads happen. You never need feel over-smoked. That's the miracle of Marlboro. I don't even know what over-smoked means, but in any case, this was the advertising. But we learned eventually what the cigarette companies already knew, that cigarette smoking was deadly, that it was a contributor to a whole host of diseases, a cause of many of those diseases, and because of one particular ingredient, nicotine, it was an addictive procedure, an addictive process. So as public health started started fighting the trend of smoking, fighting the media campaigns, right? Some of you have probably seen ads with Terry. Both those top pictures are Terry. That picture was taken shortly before she died. And we've seen this sort of backlash from the public health community in demonstrating the evils, the harms of cigarette smoking. And it worked. For a long period of time, we saw traditional cigarette smoking decrease. The green line is adults, the blue line is students. This is 1965 to 2014, and I'm not sure what the blip in the blue is. Could be just a data point, data collection zip or something, but in either case, we've seen the actual usage of traditional smoking decrease, which is great. Even when we look at youth tobacco use, so this is from the National Youth Tobacco Survey, all of these blue elements are traditional products. Cigarettes, cigars, smokeless, even hookah pipes, which are basically water pipes where you would you would inhale vapors of a sweetened tobacco product. But here's e-cigarette. You can see it was originally introduced around 2010, started to pick up around 2013. Now this is 2015 to 2016. But if what we're seeing in New Hampshire indicates anything, that line should be going up. Because I have been doing these presentations sometimes 2 and 3 times a week in southern New Hampshire alone at school districts because it has exploded over the past year for them. And we know this in New Hampshire. So if we look at youth e-cigarette use tripling, there's that huge curve. This is from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. When we look at e-cigarette use, nationally about 11%, in New Hampshire 25% of the students are demonstrating use of e-cigarettes. So it's a legitimate concern, it's a legitimate percentage of students that we're concerned about. And of course we have a whole new set of role models, right? I mean, if Johnny Depp is doing it, it's got to be the coolest thing since ever. Jenny McCarthy, Leo DiCaprio, all shown in social media vaping, all shown at awards ceremonies vaping. And it's touted as a healthy alternative to smoking. What do we know about e-cigarettes? Well, they're unregulated for the most part by agencies like the Food and Drug Administration because they're not considered a drug, and the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency because they're not considered a tobacco product. They're somewhere in between. The only rules we have really seen so far focus on child-resistant packaging of the little liquid nicotine juice bottles because they were little stoppered bottles with a sweet-smelling solution in them and varying levels of nicotine, which can be absorbed right through the skin, so if little kids got into it, it could be very toxic and, in fact, fatal. The e-cigarette companies have been targeting children. I mean, if you look on social media, the number of ads on social media where our kids are and we necessarily are not necessarily in the same space, lots of ads for e-cigarettes. The flavors are all sweet candy flavors, which make it seem innocuous. And many vapors actually do endorsements. If you go online, you'll see kids, we go onto YouTube, and you'll see kids doing smoke tricks, lots of fancy smoke. There's actually competitions on how many bubbles and how many clouds and heart shapes and whatever that you can do. And the kids will often, this is a video of some Canadian boys, they're hotboxing. They're in a closed vehicle, and they're doing what they can to fill the entire thing with vapor. Now, they'll hold their device, kind of like the makeup videos. I'm using a number 7 eye crayon. You know, they'll hold the device up. They'll tell you what brand of vape they're using, of e-cigarette device they're using, what flavor they're using, and they'll try to fill the car with vapor. They'll share it too. You want to try mine, which is a wonderful thing during flu season. Some people won't vape in their cars because it leaves a film on the inside of the windshield and on the dashboard. Somehow they're not making that connection that if it's leaving a film on the inside of the windshield and the dashboard, it's also leaving residue in your lungs, but that's beside the point. So if you happen to have a chance to cruise around YouTube, take a spin and look up smoke, look up vape. It's an interesting social experiment. Make sure you clear your browser history afterwards. But it's eye-opening. And the media strategies really haven't changed all that much. This is a traditional cigarette ad, and here's Blue. Stephen Dorff, action hero, is a spokesman for Blue e-cigarettes. He's also an emphysema patient, which I think is interesting. Jenny McCarthy is actually a Blue spokesperson. We don't even pretend anymore that this is a cessation device, right? Nobody likes a quitter. Why quit? Switch to Blue. And I heart you, please vape. Again, that selling of it as a healthy strategy, a healthier choice. And for adults who are already smokers, it may be a healthier choice. We don't really know yet. Certainly it has none of the tar and less of the harmful chemicals that traditional cigarettes have. We know that. So if you're an adult who has switched to vaping because you were a smoker, no judgment. The problem is we have something in the neighborhood of 2 million teens who never smoked who have taken up vaping. So they're not using this as a cessation tool. This is their introduction to nicotine addiction 101. And the companies that are selling these products are delighted with that because you saw that decline in tobacco products. Well, guess who's behind most of the major vape brands? Yes, our pals in the tobacco industry. As a cessation device, there are some questions. So if it's supposed to be a cessation device, then it would have to be a medical device, which would mean it would have to be manufactured to medical device standards, which would be expensive. It would have to demonstrate through research that it was successful in order to make those claims, and it would be regulated. There's really no need for them to market it as a cessation tool because it's so popular they don't need the additional market. In fact, England has struggled with cigarette smoking even more so than I think the U.S. has per capita. And so their National Health Service was about to endorse a particular type of e-cigarette as a cessation product. The cigarette manufacturer, the e-cigarette manufacturer, backed out of the deal because they didn't want to have to comply with all the rules and regs, and they didn't need the market. This was going to be their nationally endorsed product, and the manufacturer walked away. So to get an idea of how much of a marketing push and a marketing strategy this is, and this is what we talk about when we talk to teens, because I can tell them this is bad for you, and you know that they're going to run right home and stop doing it right away. But if I tell them you're being used by the marketing firms, you're being used by the manufacturers, that tends to hit home more. Nobody likes to feel that they're being used or being manipulated. It's a fad in many ways, a very social activity. It's very, all the kids are doing it. That's what you'll hear. Granted, we know that only, at worst case, 25% of them are doing it, but it's like Tide Pods. 1 or 2 YouTube videos can make it seem like every third kid is having Tide Pods for dessert, and that we know that's not true. But it is very popular and very visible on YouTube. My daughter goes to Pinkerton. They've closed the bathrooms on 2 floors in the Freshman Academy building because they have so many kids there vaping. And now there's a monitor at the restrooms on the 1st floor, which is the only one the kids are allowed to use. Schools are doing things like, Pinkerton's doing a 10-day suspension. They're treating it as drug paraphernalia. They have an out-of-school program where you can reduce your suspension to 5 days. It has a waiting list because they've had so many kids coming off of sports teams. I mean, it's that prevalent. And Pinkerton is not exclusive. It's just one of the larger schools, so maybe their problem seems a little bit more extreme. But I'm sure the school system here has had the same challenges. Sanborn has had me to talk to their middle schoolers and their high school students because we are seeing this in middle schools. it's a lot like finger spinners, those fidgets. But when this fad fades, the nicotine addiction will remain. And that's the problem. In addition to detention and sort of punitive actions for breaking the rules, we are going to be dealing with teenage kids, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds with nicotine addiction. So once taking their vapes away from them is not going to solve the problem. So what do we know about nicotine? Highly addictive. It's derived from tobacco plants. It has psychoactive effects, so it can be a stimulant or can be a relaxant. Drug reinforcing behavior. It feels good as a stimulant. It stimulates the release of dopamine. So it does feel good, and that can reinforce its use, compulsive use, the urge to smoke at certain times of the day. If you were a smoker, you know, again, certain settings you feel like doing it more. It's easy to relapse after abstinence, and many smokers will tell you that they'll be in certain, they could have not had a cigarette for 20 years, but they're sitting in a bar with their friends and they would kill for a cigarette. Same kind of social ties and social practices. And then physical dependence, because it is an addictive drug. I won't go through all these systems, but we think of smoking and vaping as dangerous in particular for the lungs, but nicotine affects a whole lot of different organ systems in the body. And again, we're talking about developing bodies. They're still at that evolving stage. This is particularly true when we're talking about brain development. And as with other substances, one of the dangers of introducing an addictive behavior or substance during adolescence is that it can prime them for addictive behaviors later in life because it affects their reward system, their stimulation system, their response to urges. I always forget the word that I want there. So it's going to affect their controls, their behavioral control systems. This is an example of an e-juice display. I took a picture of this on a field trip to a vape shop. I have a very interesting job. What'd you do today, Mom? I went to a vape shop, honey. Why do you ask? And they're lovely. They're like living rooms, big couch, sectional units, big screen TVs, often a bar set up where you can try different juices, different devices. As you can see, as a cessation device, the idea would be you would start at a high concentration, 24 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine, and slowly reduce to 0 milligrams of nicotine. The flavors that we can't really see too well in this picture, but are things like cinnamon coffee cake, strawberry cheesecake, cotton candy, bubble gum, unicorn tears, everything you could possibly imagine. Sicky, sweet, again, candy-like flavors. Exactly what the Marlboro man wants when he climbs off his Harley. Man, I could go for a strawberry margarita smoke right now. You know, clearly we are targeting these toward kids. And these flavors are troubling even aside from the nicotine. Because while they are food-safe ingredients, food-safe sweeteners, those ingredients are meant to be ingested. That means digested through the stomach. Instead, they're being inhaled. Now, I know that you can safely drink Hershey's chocolate syrup. I have tested this theory in the interest of science myself. I can verify. But if I turn it into a mist and try to inhale it, it's a very different system we're talking about, much more sensitive tissue in the lungs. And in fact, one of the flavors that we know to cause problems is diacetyl. It's a buttery flavoring. It was sprayed on, and may still be sprayed on, microwave popcorn kernels before they're packaged. The workers that were spraying it weren't wearing masks or anything. They would inhale some of this aerosolized flavoring, and they would develop what was called bronchiolitis obliterans, which commonly known as popcorn lung, where it would literally gunk up the lung tissue. That's a technical term. I don't want you to be frightened by that, but it would reduce the airflow and the elasticity of lungs and their ability to process oxygen. Diacetyl is a flavoring that has been used in many of the e-juices, buttered rum, French toast, any of those that have that sort of buttery flavoring. And this is one we know, when inhaled, causes lung disease. We have no idea what all the other flavorings are going to do. We haven't had that kind of exposure. We will know because we have an entire generation of lab rats who are exposing their lungs on a daily basis to flavorings which may be safe when eaten, but we have no idea what they're going to do when they're inhaled. So there's a lot of pictures coming up next because these things come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. And what is it you're looking for? Would you even recognize what you had? If you saw this on someone's desk, would you think that was an e-cigarette of some kind? Looks like a pen, right? So does this one. This one looks at least a little bit like a traditional cigarette. These are sort of your early disposable, relatively cheap products. This one I had samples of until a teacher at a school system I won't mention, Sanborn Middle School, decided she'd see, does it twist open? No, it doesn't. But anyway, my budget is very low. So these are not refillable, not rechargeable. They would be, say, you just got a little paper tab, you pull the tab off, you press the button, it has a battery inside. It's good for about 600 puffs. And they're at about 6 to 12 milligrams per milliliter concentration. So fairly weak nicotine solution. This one is crazy apple. There's also, as I said, strawberry margarita and wild mango and clearly fun flavors. When we start talking about these devices, they're a little more complex. These are not disposable. You would fill these with your own choice of juices. They have batteries that can be recharged. This is called a vape mod. These are the ones that tend to blow up because they have a battery that can be modified. They have a heating element that can be modified to get a higher temperature. But again, there's no consumer product safety standards for these products. Teddy bears have 14, 18 consumer product safety standards. These do not. And of course, for your hipsters, a pipe version. Because you really need something to go with the beard. Now, if you're on Pinterest, this is an interesting little stroll. Put up vape on Pinterest and you'll get everything from the superhero Marvel comic series to Iron Man to your sort of bling and beach series to everything from Hello Kitty to whatever. A lot of steampunk stuff out there. Here's the basic technology. You're working with a mouthpiece of some kind, a reservoir for the liquid, a heating element, and a battery. This actually has a USB charging port on the end of it. And this is a very basic style of vape pen. You would fill the reservoir with your flavored liquid, screw it together, turn it on, and vape. These are vape mods, as I mentioned. Of course, we're still selling the Athena line for ladies because we're still using a lot of those same marketing strategies. Here's some of the consequences of what happens when you have a device that has high temperature heating and liquids and no regulations to control it. Here are the simpler technology ones. That's how the ones that I showed you before. This one here is sold. They hang on a little thing next to the Slim Jims in the Shell station. They're about $7.99. So easily within the price point of a kid, they can talk themselves past the 19-year-old working behind the counter. This one makes school nurse heads explode. It's a vape device that's designed to look like an asthma inhaler. So you could carry that around without anybody thinking twice about it. This is the Cadillac. This is the one that has changed the game. So this is Juul, and you may have heard kids refer to Juuling. Juul is so popular that it has become the name of vaping. They're Juuling. This is the device. These are the mouthpiece and flavor pod. This is the charger. It plugs right into your computer, your USB port. It's a little magnetic port, looks like an antenna. It's about the size of a large thumb drive, about this long, very slender. You can buy skins for it to make it decorative. The flavors come in Virginia tobacco, creme brulee, mango, cool mint, fruit medley. And this is not even advertised as a cessation product. This is meant as a replacement product for people who are smokers. It is meant as a replacement device. So unlike most devices, this has a particularly high concentration of nicotine because they want it to be satisfying to someone with a long-term smoking habit. So these run about 50 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine. Now kids are starting with these because they're so easy to disguise and they are the coolest of cool. They're supposed to be the iPhone of e-cigarettes. And the FDA is now leaning on Juul as a company, trying to determine how to curb the access of these products. These are bought online. So, of course, all you have to do is click the button that says, are you over 18? Yes, I am. Do you have an Amazon gift card? Yes, I do. Okay, I can purchase these on Amazon. I've got gift cards that I bought at CVS. I can use those to buy this stuff online, have it shipped to my house, sell a few to my friends, and cover my expenses. There are, of course, counterfeit Juul pods that you can also buy because it's kind of like the Keurig of e-cigarettes. And they occasionally offer special flavors, like holiday flavors. This is Juno, very similar. Again, kids keep them in their sleeve, they keep them in their pocket, they keep them in their backpack, in the middle of class. All they have to do is suck in and it activates it. It's not like cigarettes where you've got to light something, you've got to strike a match, it creates a huge cloud of smoke, and then you have to dispose of it somehow. This you can use as needed, a puff here, a puff there, a puff here, a puff there. And in fact, as a cessation device, because you're no longer waiting to go out into the smoking area as an employee and have your 15-minute smoke break out in the snow in New Hampshire in the middle of January, you can quickly take a puff in the stairwell or in the restroom without anyone really knowing. People tend to be smoking more, not less. So that's the adults. This is a new horror that recently came up. This is vapeware. And these are backpacks and sweatshirts that have a port built directly into the strings of the sweatshirt. You can see this is the mouthpiece. This is a nice rubber edge. It fits right over any shape or type of vape device. And that way, all you have to do is grab the string of your hoodie and puff into it. Of course, they also have the little black dress that has a hood with a string for those of us who need to be really fashionable. You can read the small print, but I'll help you. It says, make it discreet because what you vape and when you choose to do so is nobody's business. Make it hands-free because you've already got your hands full with phones and keys. It doesn't say school books, but love those. Can you vape marijuana? Yes, you can vape marijuana, as a matter of fact. There are devices that you can heat up dry leaf material just enough to make it release its chemicals but not burn. You can also use it as a concentrate. So when you take marijuana leaf and you force butane or alcohol through it, you can extract a resin, whereas traditional marijuana has about a 10% THC. These little babies here, wax or shatter or butter, those have somewhere in the 60 to 80% THC concentration. And so you just need a special device that you can heat it up with and it releases its vapor. Very strong, plus some of the pesticides and the residual butane, so you get that extra little kick. These might be the marijuana devices that you may have seen. I'm not going to say you're familiar with. I'm not looking at anyone particular when I say that. These are marijuana devices you may have seen in the movies. There, that was good. Old school glass pipes, bongs, water pipes for smoking dried material. This is the new century. So these can be used, some of these can be used for either liquids or dried material. Some of them can be used, this is actually a water pipe device, so an electronic bong. I love this one here. This is, again, a water pipe. It comes with its own leather case. Again, your hipster version. These are more pricey. These are more in the, can be $99, $100, $150 range. So we're taking it up a notch, but just so that you have an idea of, what these things look like. These are all pens that can be used with those wax concentrates that I had the little pots of in the last picture. So again, would you necessarily know that if you saw this kind of device in someone's desk, in someone's drawer, that was a electronic delivery device of nicotine and or other stuff? So just for show and tell. So what we don't know, when you heat up e-juice, the chemicals change. So some of them do change into things like formaldehyde, one of the ingredients in traditional cigarettes that we worry about. And the other chemicals that they morph into when they're heated can cause inflammation. And we know that if you repeatedly expose tissue to inflammation, you can develop illnesses like cancer, like COPD, like chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. We can't really test these products because there's no standard product. It's not like there's a Coke and a Pepsi and we can check this national product. In fact, on my field trip, when I asked the fellow, where do you get your liquids from, this beautiful display of all these flavors? He said, well, a lot of people order them from China, but I don't trust that at all. I make these myself. This is my own line of products. I order the nicotine solution online and the flavorings. These are all my own recipes. Really? What's your background? Well, I used to be the copy center manager at Staples, and before that, I worked at the audio shop in Best Buy, which are great jobs, don't get me wrong. But that is not the pharmacological background that I am looking for when I'm going to be sucking something into my lungs that you have whipped up in the back of your store in what I'm certain are lab-like conditions. Plus, we can only test these devices on mice and tissue. We can't test them on people. So, again, we don't know what the long-term effect is going to be, aside from the nicotine, which we do know. Takeaway points, is this more dangerous for teens than it is for adults? Absolutely. It's a social activity with an addictive chemical. So once the fad is over, the addiction will be there. We know that their brains are subject and susceptible to addictive behaviors and priming them for dangers later on, and we don't know what those ingredients' long-term effects are going to be. We also know that 8th graders who use e-cigarettes are 10 times more likely to eventually smoke tobacco cigarettes. So that nice curve that we had is going to go back up because they can't always get their vape supplies, but they can always find cigarettes. And we know that kids who smoke cigarettes are more likely to smoke marijuana. We know this traditionally. So I think we can extrapolate that kids who use e-cigarettes are going to be more likely to try marijuana as well. There are some great resources out there, though. Science News for Students has a great sort of piece for kids to investigate on their own. Some of the issues around vaping, the safety issues. BU put out this great video. It's more appropriate for high school and college kids because occasionally they use words like bullshit, which of course makes it way more valid. You know, they're going to believe it because there were bad words in it, but not really appropriate for middle school kids. And then stillblowingsmoke.org. Great peer-generated kind of conversations, peer-to-peer conversations. I would also, any kind of peer group stuff that you can do around e-cigarettes tend to be constructive. Dover Youth to Youth has got some great stuff going on. And at epc.org, we have some good things on our website, a great sort of fact sheet on e-cigarettes. We have a middle school, high school curriculum that was developed according to educational standards here in New Hampshire, which includes, of course, a Jeopardy game, because you should have a Jeopardy game to keep things going. And Catch My Breath, which if you talk to Breathe New Hampshire, this is a program that they're promoting. They've actually got a teacher they've purchased the licensing for using it here in New Hampshire.
In Raymond, actually.
Raymond, yes, thank you. There's an 8th grade teacher that was working with this program, I think, and they're pushing her as a resource. So, yes, excellent program. And again, my preference, my specialty is talking to adults. I can't talk to my own 14 or 19-year-olds, so I don't even attempt to talk to yours. So if you can find materials that are good with them, please go for them, because I think that'll be more effective. New Hampshire's Department of Health and Human Services Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Program, and of course, me at the Poison Center, which you can reach through 222-1222. Hopefully you put that number in your phones. You can text the word poison to 85511. You can go on our website and chat. We're up right on the cutting edge, I can tell you. We are right there. And you can always reach me because I live in Hampstead, travel from Salem to Colebrook, doing exactly this kind of thing. So if I can help you, ta-da. Stop the clock.
Excellent.
Yes, that
Thank
coffee
you very
really helped.
much. That's super informative.